I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dipankar Jakharia. I am Secretary, Northeast Writers Forum. And just a minute, I'll just admit people who are listening. And since the time, the COVID had started, I believe webinars and, web talks and online interaction has become rather the new normal, basically. So we, from Northeast Writers Forum, we have started off with this thing, with a web talk. We are very, very grateful and very happy that we have our illustrious speaker, which we have a moderator to, will introduce and do the honors. I'd like to personally welcome each and every participants and members of the Northeast Writers Forum. Before we kickstart our entire event, I'd like to, our president to say a few words. We fondly call him Dhruba as in Dhruba Hazarika. I don't think he needs any introduction, but even though I'll do the customary introduction. A former member of the Indian Administrative Service, an author, the former chairman of APSC, and much loved person of our forum. So Dhruba, would you kindly say a few words and address other participants?
Good evening, Dipanjal. And thank you for the kind words, especially for saying I'm well loved, which I doubt very much. But it's a lovely evening for me personally, because for the first time after many years, I'll be coming across an icon in the literary world, that's Geeta Dharmarajan. But before we come to all the actual program, I would welcome all the members of the entire Northeast Writers Forum's fraternity or sorority, from Arunachal to Sikkim, Tripura, our brothers and sisters, members from Nagaland, Mizoram, Manipur, Meghalaya, and also from Assam. The forum's existence has been from 1996, as you all know, and we have had the good fortune of interacting with some literary luminaries. This evening we have with us Geeta, whom I endearingly call Geeta. She is Geeta Dharmarajan. The whole of India knows her because of her yeoman service in promoting literacy among children and in giving us, various benefits that made us feel, worthwhile of being literary enthusiasts. Rashmi Narzary, who will be actually moderating, will be giving a more elaborate welcome to her, giving a profile on her. But today, from the bottom of my heart, because it's been a long time, because Mr. or Mrs. COVID, whichever gender you want to apply, has not been a very happy, creature for us. Maybe he or she is dwelling everywhere with a lot of happiness, making us stay at home and feel safe and sound. And many of us have been probably writing books and short stories, and our imagination is going haywire too, and think maybe one day something will happen. But as of now, what is happening is that we are, for the first time, the Northeast Writers Forum this year, after our annual general meeting on the 8th of February, we are going to have an interaction with a literary stalwart in the shape of Geeta, who will be up in the screen very soon. And with these words, once again, a very hearty welcome to everyone. And I now hand over to Dipanjal, our secretary, and to Rashmi to carry on with the rest of the proceedings. Thank you so very much, and welcome once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhruba. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhruba.
Thank you, Dipanjal.
Before I hand over the entire proceedings to Rashmi, I just like to request all the participants to obviously keep their audio in mute and the video off, so that there is no interference and there is no sound interference in any way. Rashmi Narzary, who will be doing the moderating sort of a thing. This is not exactly a webinar. This is more of a Wave Talk, we'd like to sing and we'd like to listen to ma'am. We have been excitedly waiting to listen to ma'am. And before I hand it over to Rashmi, I need to, like introduce her also formally in the sense, she is the Joint Secretary of our forum. And apart from being the Joint Secretary, she is an author, she is a communication skill consultant, creative writing mentor, and an Sahitya Academy, the Bal Sahitya Puraskar awardee also. So Rashmi, I think I'll hand it over to you to do the honors and this.
Thank you, Dipankar. So a very warm welcome and good evening to everyone. That includes all of us on the screen and off the screen. The warmest of my welcome to all of you. So before we proceed, I would like to introduce to all of you the one and only Geeta Dharmarajan. Geeta Baido, as I very dearly call her, loves writing for children. She received the Padmashree in 2012 for her work in literature and education. She was named Frugal Innovator by the Millennium Alliance, set by the governments of India and the United States. She was also the co-winner of Business Standard Social Entrepreneur of the year 2018. An award-winning writer for children and adults, she has over 30 years of professional experience, having served at the India Today group of companies, the University of Pennsylvania, and INTACH, which is the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. That was before she founded Katha in 1988. And for the rest of it, we would love to hear from Geeta Baido herself. Warm welcome, Geeta Baido. It's all yours now.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, always.
Thank you. Dear friends and my dearest friends in the Northeast, starting with Dhruba, Rashmi, and Mamang, and all of you whom I have met and whom I love dearly, and your literature, which I love so much. So when Dhruba asked me, can you, and Rashmi asked me, I said, I cannot say no to anyone who's asking on behalf of Dhruba or is asking from the Northeast.
Oh, sweet. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, you are very, very special for us in Katha and for me personally. So I think when we look at the title that was given to me, I was very excited. Literature in the time of a pandemic. And I thought that there was so much that we could say, so much that has come down to us from various people. And I was looking at the pandemic from close by. We are a group of volunteers in Chennai who are, and I being 71 years old, I'm not really the one going out and doing much, but I think that, we as a group, and I take so much pleasure in saying that we as a group have been able to do whatever little we could to help the guest workers and the migrant workers, some of them coming even from Assam to Tamil Nadu and to Chennai. And sometimes when I look at the way in which we have heaped humility on them and we have heaped indignities on them, we have sprayed them with, with bleach and things like that. I think that, as writers, I think we must cringe inside us. We must feel, because I think writers feel very, very, very clearly and very deeply. And I think that feeling of what is India coming to, who are we as Indians, and why are we able to do this? What can we learn from other people? And I think what can we learn from literature? So when the pandemic started, I turned to my favorite writers. I turned to the writers who write the Katha Prize stories and have written for Katha. Some of them like Kambar and Hare Krishna Deka and are great, great writers whom I remember. I remember Dhruba's story very, very much, Chicken Fever. So I go back to Chicken Fever because I think it's a very complex story, very complex relationships, but a story which he says just came. And I think a story which just comes is a good story because it has to come. So when you look at stories and you look at, what happens during a pandemic, I think that many, many times there are relationships and there are ways in which we as writers see what is happening over there. I was thinking when I was looking at the title, so I said, why should we talk in terms of literature? And then I see my mother. My father died just 3 months ago. She's going through a solitude and she's going through a separation after having lived with a man for 75 years. And she has found a lot of pain and emotions within her. But then the COVID came immediately thereafter, and she had to be in lockdown. And so we found that, here is a person who is silent in isolation and as isolation and lockdown thrust upon her. And what does she turn to? She writes poetry, of course, in Tamil, but she's turned to haiku. And now I find that every morning when I get up, I get a haiku from her on WhatsApp. So she's mastered the WhatsApp and she's 90 years old. She's mastered the WhatsApp and she's sending me a haiku. So I think she watches the TV, she sees what's happening, she can't bear it. And then what she does is she writes a haiku, and the haiku is on the coronavirus. So one of them says, you can even forget the wedding, ceremonies, but don't forget your mask. So there are little jokes that she cracks through her haiku, and that is what is keeping her alive today. It is that literature which keeps my mother alive, and she is very dear to me. And I find that if literature is that important to each one of us, I know why, because it's keeping my mother alive and happy in times when she's going through two kinds of isolation. And when I think about isolation, I'm thinking immediately, my mind goes to James Dokhuma and the meeting that we had in Itanagar, and that great talk on silence that, Mr. Dokhuma gave. I was thinking, what is the silence that he's talking about? Why is silence so important in literature? So I'm looking at a silence now, and I'm looking at the kind of silence that James Dokhuma was talking about in that meeting, which was convened, I think, in Itanagar by Mamangdai and by Dhruba and by the Northeast Writers Forum. And we were all working together at that point of time. So I wanted to dwell a little bit on this idea of silence, or this word silence, which seems to be very, very important for us who look at stories and story writing and literature. I remember the writer, the Serbian writer, Milorad Pavic, who says that those with silence in their hearts and those with quiet in their hearts cannot be alike. So I'm wondering, what is this silence and what is this quiet? How can we say that silence and quiet, which for many of us are synonyms? So silence is quietness is silence. But Milorad Pavic says no. And this was something similar to what I think James Dokhuma said at that point of time. And that's why I think Milorad Pavic and Dokhuma's words come so closely to me now when I'm looking at the pandemic. So why is there a difference between somebody who has quiet inside them and who has silence inside them? He says that those who have silence inside them are like farmers. They farm that silence. They water it, they nurture it, they look after it, they shower love on it, and they grow that silence inside them, and out of that comes creativity. And those who are quiet, according to him, are those who are together in a group, and they do a lot of things which are for gain from a different sense, but they are not the people of silence. They have quiet within them. Now you have to read Landscapes Painted with Tea. This is Milorad Pavic's novel, which I love dearly and which I'm reading now. So to understand what silence and quiet are. So when we go back to looking at the pandemic and we say, what is this? Why is it that, during the pandemic, when there's so much of a cacophony, so much of noise and so much of, chaos around us. So many people who are being disrupted and displaced, and we have migrant workers on the road carrying their children, carrying all that they own on their heads, having no money at all, having spent all their money. And when we look at the kind of, heart-wrenching agony, heart-wrenching sorrow that they are going through, I think, where does literature come into all this? Nayanthara Sehgal says, when she was interviewed recently, she says, I cannot write in this period. I mean, I just can't write in this period because it is just too much for me to take, and I can just take the horror of what we are going through. But when you look at, for instance, you look at, the whole thing of what writers went through. So I'm thinking back to, for instance, the bubonic plague. You must have all heard about it. Shakespeare was writing at that point of time, and the theatres had closed down in 1606. There was no writing that was happening over there. And what do we see? We see a lot of writing happening, a lot of plays happening from Shakespeare. And during the bubonic plague, we have Edward Munch, the painter, who's painting these brilliant paintings full of color. And we have Newton, Isaac Newton, the scientist. Now he's studying in Cambridge University. The bubonic plague has shut down the university and he can't do anything. So he goes home and he takes a 1,000-page notebook with him, an empty 1,000-page notebook. And the rest is history, or, okay, it's gravity, because that is what we got from him. We got the whole theory of gravity in those days when he was in isolation, when he was silent, and there was a plague, and the bubonic plague raging all over England. The same thing happens here. I mean, though during the famine, I think we have a poem just before the famine that Rabindranath Tagore had written, where he says that, Lord Buddha asks everyone. He asks his minister, he asks his treasurer, he asks his people around him, what can we do? There is difficulty in our land. What can we do? And everyone says, the minister says, I'm so sorry, I wish I could. The treasurer says, oh, I wish I had some money and I would have given, but I find I don't have any. And so do the other ministers. They say, we want to help my lord, but we don't have anything with us at all. But there's a young sannyasin. She says, my lord, if you want it, I will help. This is Rabindranath Tagore's poem, translated and very loosely translated by me. So all the people turn to her and they say, you are a beggar, and how can you sort of help? So many people here, how can you help when we all have thrown up our hands? And she says, she shows her begging bowl and she says, I have my begging bowl and I can go to every home and I can come to you also, and whatever you give, I will make that and I will share, because this is the Lord's wish. Now, when you look at literature and you get the kind of stories and the kind of enlightenment, I think, from these stories, we realize that the pandemic is one more place where we as humans can show compassion and we can show empathy, because that is what literature teaches us. Whether you're looking at Charles Dickens or looking at Rabindranath Tagore. I remember, for instance, one of my favorite writers again, Avvaiyar. Avvaiyar was one of the early Bhakti poets. Some say she was writing in the 2nd century BC. Some say maybe it was a little later. We really don't know whether it was one person or more. But as a child, all of us learned Avvaiyar. And one of the things I remember very clearly is Aram Cheyya Virumbu. It is in Tamil, in Old Tamil. Aram means giving, being charitable, kind, whatever. That is the word Aram. Cheyya. Yes, not even alms, but being able to give. Being able to give of yourself, being able to give of what you possess, being able to give. It's not the having, but the being, and giving of that being. Aram, Cheyya is to do, and Virumbu is desire. She doesn't say, go and give. She says, desire to give. Now, that word, I think, desire to give, in a pandemic becomes very important. So as I was saying, when I was reading about Avayar, and I'm reading Pavich, and I'm reading other people and saying, what are we as individuals, what can we do during a pandemic like this? How can we help people? Where are we going? In Katha, in the organization I'm running, we are running into problems because funding is not coming in as it used to come, and we are all worried. So we are not able to give salary. So there are problems all around. We are like everybody else. And then I find that I get step back and I start reading a book, and it gives me a peace. It gives me a quiet. It gives me a silence. And it is that silence, I think, that James Dokhuma and Milorado Pavich talks about. So I want to go in a little deeper. Rashmi, you should tell me when the time is over, okay? Because I'm not looking at the time.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm absolutely listening to you, and I'm keeping a track of the time. And because, Baidu, you just took a break in between, and because you are speaking of Katha, let me please ask you, how do you plan to go about the Katha lab schools during these times? Because silence is not one thing that the Katha lab schools follow. There's such a vibrant group of children there. So these days, how are they dealing with the pandemic?
Well, over there also, Rashmi, we are having problems because the children cannot come to school. But they live in one of the largest slum clusters in Delhi. And they live in very, very crowded environments. We have about 600 families for every hectare of land. And that number has only grown recently because people have put homes on top of homes, and they don't even have a foundation. So the whole thing is staggering. And I'm so scared if there is an earthquake, and Delhi is an earthquake-prone area, what will happen to it? Will it fall? And what are we going to do about it? Because the people have just been building. Now the children are all trapped, I would say. I really use the word trapped with a very real sense of the word. They are trapped inside their small homes, which are 10 by 10. And if you walk into one of those homes, you will know. For instance, in one of the homes that I had walked into recently, it's only about 10 by 10, and there's a nala which is running right through it. And there's a clothesline that is stretched on top of it. Now, that is the home they have. And if by any chance something drops from the clothesline into the nala, it is spoiled and they cannot wear it. Because the nala is carrying all the sewage from Tughlakabad and going towards the sewage plant, which we have in Delhi. And it goes through the homes, because I think when you are poor, you build your homes where nobody else wants to live. It's degraded environments where we allow people who are poor to build their homes. I think sometimes I'm ashamed to be an Indian and ashamed to say that, I belong to a community of people who are middle class and have a home and have a roof over our heads, because many of our children don't have this. That is what the pandemic is. So now what we have is groups of our teachers, because we have about 60, 70 teachers with us. So we have, each teacher is taking a whole group of children, and we don't have smartphones. So it's not as if we can say, okay, here is a smartphone and we can sort of start teaching them like the more elite schools are able to do.
That's precisely why I asked, Baidu, because I have seen those children. I have met them because I'd had the opportunity to visit your lab schools.
Absolutely. They are a happy bunch of children, and now we get a lot of things from them. So I remember, some of our kids are very good at rap. So they came up with a rap on the coronavirus. So it's very nice. So we have it up on YouTube so other people can hear it in Hindi. And they can say,
wow.
oh, this is the way to go. And I can't rap, but they can. So we have the rap.
This is another form of literature at the time of the pandemic.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
And they are writing. And our teachers are making, stick puppets. And they're teaching with stick puppets. So that again is a form of art in the time of pandemic. Literature, art. I mean, if you go back to the Bharatanatyam Shastra, everything, whether it's a performance art or it's a literary art, is art that we use to communicate. And literature is the best way that is one of the best ways we can communicate. So as I want to go back to Milrado Pavic, and he says, after you've caught your fish, you can throw away. The net is of no use. And after you've got the meaning, these words are of no use. And I think that is what most of us are moving towards, that our words can leave a meaning in the hearts of our readers and in the hearts of the people who look at us, and we can sort of allow them to forget our words, because we are nothing but the conduit which allows words with meaning to reach our readers. And that during a pandemic, I think is extremely, extremely important. Yeah? Did I answer your question, or did I go all over the place?
Yeah. We have, I'll just take in one question because we're already talking about the Katha children. We have one question from Ranjana. She wants to know, how are the children now these days accessing their classes, their lessons?
Well,
from the Katha Lab schools. Yes.
So we are using WhatsApp, and we are having connections through WhatsApp or through the normal phone. So it takes a lot of time for the teacher, because she's doing it one by one rather than doing it as a whole class. Like now in the Zoom, we have quite a few people who are listening, and I'm talking or you are talking. That is not the kind of situation that we are able to have. But for the teachers learning together, because there's a new learning for them. They have never taught children except face to face. So now we have Zoom training for our teachers. So they are coming together in Zoom, and they are learning together so that they can go out over there and work with each child. So what is to be the curriculum? How are we going to teach it to them? How, and we have got special books on the coronavirus. So now that has become one of the things. And we are also sort of in Katha giving our children food, provisions. 1,000 families are being fed from the Katha school. So we are doing whatever we can to help our children. But yes, they are having very difficult times.
That's true. And then also regarding the 300 million challenge. So how, I think the whole pandemic, because we were planning it out in some manner, somehow we were talking about it, some drafts were coming in. But because of this lockdown and the pandemic and everything put together, the whole thing came to a standstill. But once everything opens out, Baido, how do you plan to go about the 300 million challenge? That is one thing. And the other is about the Katha Utsav. It used to be a huge festival of an amazing confluence of talents. But now I think there is, because of the social distancing in prevalence, how do we go about the Katha Utsav part?
So let me talk about the 300 million challenge first.
Right, yes, of course, one at a time, yes.
Now, to just briefly describe it, the 300, we have 300 million or 30 crore children.
Baido, can you get me?
Can you?
Baido?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, ma'am, you're loud and clear.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have the 300 million children in our country who are going to school today. Now, when we look at the number of children who can read, barely 1 in every 2 children can read, which means that we have about 115 million children who cannot read in our country. When we in Katha looked at, when we were turning 30, that was about 2 years ago, in 2018, we said, we have done so many things to help children to learn. And our children have entered into the administrative service. They are now working in IBM, in Citibank. They are wonderful bakers. They are wonderful artists. So is there a way in which we can share this? Can we give this to these 300 million children? And can we say that in every school, a child who can read can help a child who cannot read? Can we do that? Can we say that, neighboring schools? So if you have a school with many children who can read, can they help a school where there are many children who cannot read? Can we do that? So if we said that each child, teaching a child maybe a very good way, because you have 50% who can read and 50% who cannot read. It seems like some kind of divine arithmetic that we have over here. So that was the reason why the 300 million challenge was started. And at the basis of the 300 million challenge is ways in which we can get children out of poverty. We want children to read for fun and meaning. And meaning comes from literature. Meaning comes from stories. Meaning comes from being able to read something which will stay with me, stay in my mind, and influence me as a human being to be aware of the human predicament. Because I think whether it's a human or a nature predicament, I think today that is the most important thing. And that is what the 300M is doing. And we have collected a lot of literature. So we call it the GEEK program. It is Girls and Earth, Equality and Kindness. So we are saying we want equality and kindness for girls and for Earth. I'm sorry for saying girls so clearly, because I think in our country, we all know that sometimes girls are not treated very well. And when you are poor and you're a girl, it's a double whammy. And you are really at the bottom of the. So we are saying, can we look at girls becoming reader leaders, girls taking the lead, girls coming out and telling their communities that this is the way to go? Can they share their knowledge? So that is basically what the 300 million is trying to do. And we do have lots and lots of partners now across the country, across 17 states. We've taken the I Love Reading that we have been doing across into these states. And we've taken our books. We've got more than 100 books which are in the public domain. So anyone can read these books. We have one of the books translated into Ahomia also. So that was done by the Royal School over there. And we are very, very, very thankful to Anubha for stepping in immediately and saying, oh, we will do the translation and don't worry. So we had Anubha doing the translation for us. So I think that 300M is looking at taking literature into literacy and seeing how will this is what made us all read. Literature made us read. Stories made us read. It was not textbooks. So the whole 300M is built on an untextbook initiative that we have. And we are looking at how can we take Abhayar and Kabir and name it, the great writers, how could we take them to our children and enrich their lives? Yes. I'm going to stop the pandemic completely.
And Paito, how do you think literature in the time of pandemic, the trend is set of it? Do you think there is a hope in it, or do you think it is kind of gloomy, or what kind of a trend is set by literature in the pandemic?
See, if you really look at it, there are very few literatures that we quite some bad literature has come out of huge things. Like when you look at the thing that happened with the Twin Towers in New York, for instance. After that happened, a lot of very bad literature came out. So you'll find that
gloomy,
unhappy,
yes,
and not just not happy or gloomy, but really bad. I mean, it was not literature. Okay. So whenever you are looking at a time when there is a pandemic or when there is a great sorrow or a great suffering that's happening, unless, like Wordsworth said, you have the tranquility and you are recollecting everything in tranquility. And you are able to then go back and reflect on it, contemplate on it, and then come out with literature. It doesn't come out to be literature. Literature is only that which has wisdom in it. If it only has information, we would all be journalists. We are not. Writers are those who share wisdom. And that wisdom may not come when you are right in the middle of a pandemic or right in the middle of some kind of sorrow. So I think that, maybe not immediately. Immediately we are getting some very, very good journalism that's happening. A lot of revolt is happening. People are outraged. People are enraged. People are saying this should not happen. And in India, we are looking for equality. We are saying that, we should care for one another. There should be compassion. There should be empathy. And we are all citizens of this country. So there is that movement. And that is very good, because that is what normally literature aims for. We say that the pen is mightier than the sword, only for this reason. The pen, which is a very, very humble kind of a instrument, can give you much more power than what the sword can. And today, the pen is in the hands of the journalists, and they are the ones who are doing it for us. It's in the hands of the photographers. They are sharing the photographs, and they are bringing us together as a nation, as a country. We are disrupting that divisiveness that has been creeping into our country. We are looking at literature as that non-divisive tool that will bring us as a nation together. I think after this is over, I think we are going to see some really, really good literature. I'm going to see Rashmi turning out something really, really good. I want to see my friend Dhruba writing something really, really good. And I think that, out of this, all the writers out there are going to experience, they are going to internalize, they are going to take it into their minds and their hearts, and especially their hearts. And out of that is going to blossom, and there's going to be an outpouring. And it's going to be 1,000 lotuses blooming in our country. That's what I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful.
That's precisely it. And why do you think a whole lot of people are writing just because they have nothing else to do?
Well, if you are writing because you don't have anything else to do, you're not a writer. Writers don't write because they don't have anything else to do. Writers write because they cannot do anything but write. And I am driven by demons, and I'm driven by things that sit in my head, and they make it impossible for me to
The passion.
Yes, impossible for me to do anything except write. So the words have to come, and they have to pour out of me, and they may not make sense to me also, but they have to pour out. So if you are using this as a time to write, then maybe, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I think I'm being very critical, and I shouldn't be, because I think this is how writing starts. And I think this quietness that we have now, because the isolation gives me a certain quietness, and that I think can bring some great writers. And I think that internalizing of that emotion, internalizing of that human predicament, seeing people and being outraged like we are by a film, and we say this cannot and should not happen, that is the seed for all great writing. So yes, I think people who are at home and they are writing because they don't have anything else to do, I think we are going to see some really new, exciting writers, because we haven't heard them.
Maybe in the course of time, they will brush up on those writings and polish up on those writings. And maybe over the course of time, they could fine tune. And we have some more writers coming up. Churned out by the pandemic.
I'm sure. In our communities, we have something called Sher Nama. It comes from Chinua Achebe's quote that, unless the lions have their historians, they will not get any justice. So we have seen our children as the lions who are living the underbelly of the cities, and we are getting writings from them, from the underbelly. So if you look at the pandemic that we are all going through, they go through something every day. Now we worry about, children, adults dying. But do you know that in our country from 1988, about 400 children have died every day of diarrhea? Every day. And diarrhea is something that nobody dies of, not when you know that, you just have to keep the child hydrated. And today, 30 years down the line, 32 years down the line, do you know how many children are dying? 300 plus children per day of diarrhea. And that is the huge pandemic that we should be worrying about and thinking about and writing about, and not probably this coronavirus, which is, and the other viruses which they say are around the corner. Maybe, I don't know, but that's what I think.
Is Baito's audio okay? Can you get me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. So basically,
I can't hear Baito. I can't hear Geeta Baito.
I can hear you.
Yeah, Rashmi, you are very much audible to us. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can.
Rashmi, can you hear me?
Fido, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So I think that, seeing with the eyes, seeing the pandemic with the eyes of story, of a storyteller, seeing with the heart and the mind, feeling with the heart and the mind as a storyteller, I think these are some of the learnings that we can take back from literature. If we, as people who read, and I'm basically a reader, I love reading, and if we read, I think, like Dr. Radhakrishnan said, that the humanities make us both humane. And I feel that if we can think in terms of literature, the humanities, which is being reduced in our country in every college curriculum, we are finding less and less of literature appearing over there. But if we can increase that, I think that the empathy that we want and the compassion that we want for our people, for ourselves, and that thing that we want to grow within ourselves, that love for everyone, that loka samasta, sukhino bhavantu, that we say, let every life form on earth live at peace. And have I finished? I just want to finish with, do I have more time? Do I have more time? Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, definitely.
Okay. So I want to, I just wanted to talk about one story, which is not about a pandemic, but it's about the insurgency. And it's a Hare Krishna Deka story, which I remember very, very fondly. It's called The Prisoner, and it won the Katha Prize, I think in 1995 or 96, around that time. And we are looking at this person who has been taken prisoner, and he has this one young boy who is leading him and taking him to where the insurgents are. And the prisoner is going along, and the boy does everything to make the prisoner feel that he is respected, he is an elder, but this is the duty of the person who's taking him in bondage. So they come to a lake, and at the lake, the boy leaves his bag with the gun by the side of the prisoner and says, "It's so hot, I'm going for a swim." The prisoner looks at the bag, looks at the gun over there, and says, "I think that maybe I can take this gun, maybe I can escape from here." And then he sees the kingfisher. The kingfisher which is there, and as soon as the boy splashes water, the kingfisher flies away. But he says, just as the kingfisher is attracted to and bound by the lake to which it comes regularly, he is bound by the ethics by which he has lived. He cannot take that gun. He cannot shoot that boy. He cannot run away because he says there is trust. And the boy has trusted him. And that trust is what today in the pandemic we have lost. People are not trusting the government. People are not trusting the middle class. The guest workers we have are not trusting the people who hire them and give them work. I think there's a trust deficit in our country that the pandemic has created. And I can see that literature is the only way in which we can bring that trust deficit back. It is storytelling which can bring it back, because many of them come from an oral tradition. Many of them are working. They're all young men who've never been to school, do not have not come into a written tradition like you and me have. They are going from oral tradition, Shravana Shakti. They can hear, they can understand from hearing. In Chennai today, the only 3 words that we keep hearing are book and we hear marna. Why are they talking only about hunger and death over here? So when you look at, what is the misinformation that they are getting, and how can we give them the right information? I think storytellers can come in and do this and bring them from great felicity from an oral tradition into a written tradition. I think the pandemic will bring that kind of equity of learning, of quality learning, not just for our children, but for our youth also. And I want to say that when I look at this pandemic, I'm thinking, there used to be this Chinese philosopher called Zhuangzi, and he says that, I dreamt last night that I was a butterfly, and I was flittering around and fluttering around, and I was very happy. And then I got up, and I was Zhuangzi, and I'm wondering, was I a butterfly which was dreaming it was a man? Or am I now a man and I'm in the dream of the butterfly? Or am I the butterfly which is dreaming it is a man? We all live such multiple lives. We all live such parallel lives. We are all butterflies. We are all humans. But I think at some point of time, when fantasy and reality come together, like in a pandemic, and literature comes out of it, I think it is a blessing for people, for Indians, and for others. It's a way in which we can show ourselves through our writings that we can have empathy, we can have compassion, we can care, because caring finally is what literature teaches us, I think. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope I didn't bore you. Did I say anything more?
No, I think Rashmi is having some audio problem. Just
okay.
Hold in for a second.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
One second, ma'am. Just hold on for a second. I think we are having some audio problem.
I think I'm having some real network issues at my end. I would request please Dipankar and Dipanjal to please take over. I'm having some real network issues. I can't hear any of you.
Okay, no problem, Rashmi, but we can absolutely, hear you very loud and clear. Ma'am, that was one very, very, very interesting talk, was so good to hear you basically. And, your apart from the talk, your entire personality and the way you say it makes a day, it makes it so.
Thank you.
I mean, there were some question answers which I saw, there were a lot of people wanting to ask you, regarding children books, regarding this thing. Somebody was asking, that, at one point of time where telling stories to children is normal of the day. Our parents did it, our grandparents used to do it. Nowadays, with both the parents, working and hardly get any time. So somebody was asking that, do you think that it's a very important part of any parenting?
I think story and storytelling is very much part of the duties of a parent, I would say. It goes beyond just entertaining children. It is a duty. You remember, I don't know if you know, that in the Mahabharata, when Krishna was inside Devaki's womb,
yes,
she was telling the story of Rama. And at one point, when she stopped, there was a unkara from inside her stomach saying, And when she stopped, there would be a unkara, which is saying, tell me more, tell me more. So the story is something that nourishes us. It is not just an entertainment. It is something like the milk that we give the child, like the carrots and the palak that we give our child. It is like that. The story is that important. I have seen many, many parents who come to me and tell me, I don't know how to tell a story. And I say, how come? I think anybody can tell a story. You just have to say, I want to tell a story. And you can say it. So it is as simple as that. So
it's happening to us, listening to you speak, we want to listen more. Listen, hear you talk, And tell us about your favorite authors. There was a question answers out there where, tell about a favorite author. What kind of books do you like?
I read across genre. I love to read short fiction. I like to read novels. I like to read. I'm not very fond of science fiction, but I like Ursula Le Guin very much. She's a science fiction writer, so I like her writing very, very much. I think I like poetry a lot. I love to read poetry. I like mulling over poetry and trying to make meaning out of these very simple few words that are there. I love to read Rabindranath Tagore and Stray Birds. And I know, I always tell myself when I'm reading Rabindranath, I will come back. I think I understand what Rabindranath is saying, but I need more time to understand him. So I will come back, but I've understood him. And so, there is always this thing of building expectation for me. I remember reading, Gone with the Wind. I don't know how many of the people out there know Gone with the Wind. It's my generation, Margaret Mitchell story. But I remember going out and buying every new edition of Gone with the Wind when I was growing up. I always felt if it had a new cover, maybe it'll have a new ending. Maybe Bonnie will not die. Maybe Scarlett will not have these problems. Maybe.
There was some sequel also written by somebody else, not by.
Yes.
Yes. Gone with the Wind never seemed to go away.
But that is what the story gives you, that questioning, that asking, that wanting to know, can there be a different ending? Yes, I love reading.
And like everyone, now everybody has to adapt to COVID. Actually, this is now you got to live with a virus, basically. You got to live around it. I mean, do all your activities, around it. Like we are having this web talk out here, this is one, what you call, I think just a minute, somebody does, kindly mute, somebody got unmuted there, basically. And there's a way, we got to live around it. And that's why, this entire topic which came out, that is literature in the time of pandemic. I mean, first thing is that, people are obviously, like Rashmi was saying, you were saying that people will definitely be writing more. In the initial, I think, months, the entire lockdown, people had got a lot of time to write, I believe. But do you see any shift and change, in the form of the usual conventional publishing and writing a book? Maybe in terms of, say, ebooks or something like that, online reading.
Yeah. Lots of changes. For instance, Katha has got every single book of ours in Kindle now. And we are selling ebooks because we think that because the printers were all down and they couldn't print. So we couldn't print any of our books. Now we find that the cost on the environment, because climate change is around the corner, and we know that cutting down of trees is I don't know what technology, damage technology is doing to the environment, because nobody's told us about it yet. But paper is cutting down trees, and paper is something that we could save. So many publishers are moving towards e-publishing. We are moving towards digital publishing. The mobile technology is going to become major. I think the way in which we teach, using webinars, for instance, is going to increase. I think that the new normal is definitely going to take in the technology leap which we have been wanting for a very, very long time in our country. And I think that now it's begun to happen. And
somebody else got unmuted. And but ma'am, I think nothing like the smell of a new book, holding it in your hands, and the first smell of a book.
Yes. Oh, that is amazing. That you cannot get. And that you can never forget. See, if people like
Yes,
you and
yes.
me who held a physical book, you know, this book, if I'm saying that I am reading this book and I have a bookmark in it, and then going to that bookmark, turning that page, seeing where I am, and then saying, oh, this character, why is this character chuckling? Not in character for this person to chuckle. I'm going back few pages and I'm turning it around and I'm going back and saying, what is the character of this person? Will they chuckle or will they smile? And why is the change in character happening? I don't think I can do it. I try it with, you know, the Kindle. I have a Kindle now and I try it. Kindle kills the fun. Half the fun is gone in Kindle. A book. Always. Always. But then
Yes.
We
young
have,
people,
Rashmi,
we have, yes,
you're
yes,
audible.
I can get it. Yes, I can get you.
great.
Yeah, we have one question which is slightly, I'll just modify it a bit, and it asks whether literature in the time of pandemic will help us survive the trauma. Will help us, or how will it help us survive the trauma? Yes, Shiny says, I love the energy with which Geeta Baidu speaks. Of course.
Okay. So, can I have your question again, please?
Yes, how is the literature during these times going to help us and help us cope with the trauma that we're undergoing these days?
See, like Dickens said, the best of times, it's the worst of times. Okay. When you look at the earth,
Exactly.
it is the best of times. We are finding peacocks on the roads. We are hearing bird song. We are hearing that, you know, the earth is not grumbling as much as it used to. The red spots have gone when you're looking at the infrared pictures of our earth. Earth is, we give so little to earth and earth rejuvenates again. It's the best of times that we have. The worst of times is how we've treated one another, how much we have shown that as a middle class, as people who have the money, we have no empathy, maybe. We have become too busy in our lives and we don't have empathy. But everywhere I'm hearing that people are eating at home. They're not going out to eat anymore. They're saying, maybe we won't go out and eat. I like cooking. Many people are
very negative.
so
I would request all participants to please mute their microphones. It would be a big help if participants please keep their microphones on the mute. Thank you. Yes, Baidu,
thank
please.
you. So I think, Rashmi, if you really look at it, the pandemic is going to be chaotic. And they say that, you know, because of the climate change, the glaciers are melting in the Arctic. And there may be some prehistoric viruses that are coming out of there. They are saying that the next pandemic, which is round the corner, they say in December, might not be something like a virus. It could be a vector, and it could be a vector disease, which means that it's not washing your hands and not touching your face, which is going to become important, but it's going to be something else. So I think that today, the new normal is that we need to look after ourselves much better. We need to spend time on being healthy. We need to spend time on eating the right food. And I think young people especially, I mean, I sound like a grandmother now and very, very preachy. I don't want to be preachy, but I think the time has come when we need to care for ourselves. And many times, you know, young people, when they come even into Katha, they say, oh, it doesn't matter. I can work and I can sort of thing. And, you know, I can do 10 things at a time. And I remember when Dhruba was telling me about his eyes, some years ago, my daughter gave me a big screen. And I think alongside that big screen coming in, I also started getting a headache. It was a very bad headache that I was getting, left side headache. All the time I was getting a headache. I went to my doctor, I test this, that, everything. And then they said, you need to have an MRI. And I go into this MRI, and I don't want anybody to go into an MRI machine at all. All the noises over there. I go through all that. I come out, my MRI is perfectly fine. And I go back to my eye doctor. He said, so what has changed in your life? I keep thinking, I say, well, I've got a new monitor, which is a bigger monitor than what I usually have. He said, how big? I said, 27 inches. And he said, well, I thought it was a millimeter, a small, you know, spot, space occupying lesion in your brain that was crossing this. But it's not that. He says it's a 27-inch lesion which is causing this. So I want to tell children, be careful. Don't sit in front of these huge computer machines. And if you do, close your eyes, go away, do something else, and then come back. Okay? I think those are all learnings that we are getting from this pandemic, maybe.
True, true, true. And we'll take one last question for the day, Geeta Baido. And that is, do you think children absorb things differently these days? When they hear stories, do you think there's a difference in how children used to absorb stories earlier or children absorb stories now? And these days, especially with mostly both parents staying home with the kids and reading to them?
I would say the problem is not with the child, the problem is with the adults. Children can absorb whatever it is that we give them. But many times we have our own preoccupations as adults, and we are not sitting down with the child and reading stories. The textbooks, for instance, they are written for a test. So they look at the words, they look at, how something is expressed, and they are expressing it so that the child can learn grammar or syntax or sentence construction. They are not teaching for story. Now we know that the story has value. We all know that, not just because we are Indians and we've all listened to stories, but because the story has. It has values in it. And I know values is again a bad word these days, but values is not a bad thing. Children, if they have values, if they learn ethics, and if it comes from a story, it's something which is unlike an exam. Because in an exam, I have to learn and I have to pass the exam this month or this year. With a story, when I read a Kabir, and Kabir tells me when I go out into the marketplace, everyone is the same. And I say, at some point, it takes me 2 years as a child maybe, of 8, I've read it. It takes me till I'm 10 or 11 to say, oh, he's not talking about a marketplace. He's talking about the world. In the world, you and me are the same. That is what Kabir is saying over there. Then I say that that is absorbing. And for absorbing a story, you need time. You need to have the luxury of contemplation, of being on your own. Today, we don't give children that time. They are on their games, they are on other things. And we say, oh my God, I don't know how to stop. When Sarah, I think, came up and the blue whale came up, parents were all throwing up their hands, saying that our children are all going in for, and there were children committing suicide, this, that, and everything. But I think as parents, we have a responsibility, and that responsibility hasn't changed. I think my parents had a responsibility, and I as a parent had a responsibility, and now each of the children I have in Katha Khazana have a responsibility when they become parents. I cannot absolve myself of my responsibility as a parent and say, children are not absorbing stories now. What am I doing? I think I would like to turn it around to that. Am I ending on a very, very negative note?
Not at all, not at all. Not at all. Your sheer energy is kind of so very far away from negativity. I'm getting all these messages in the chat box saying, oh my God, look at her energy. And then you're coming all dressed in a radiating red. So that kind of, is setting the screen on fire. It's, the negativity
it's good that
of the
I'm not
pandemic
seeing,
is
because
set aside.
It's good that I'm not seeing, because my screen is not on fire. I see a very gentle in front of me.
Thank you so very much, Geeta Baido, for giving us that amazing, amazing amount of time. Actually, just like you said, it was the worst of times, it was the best of times. For us, I think it is the COVID times, it is the go with times. We have to go with the times, COVID or no COVID, and post-COVID, we have to move with times.
Yes.
Thank you so very much. And we hope to hear from you soon again, because I can see all those messages, We have a whole lot of questions, but I think we will not have the time to read all of them. But it's a surprising amount of questions we're receiving, though I kind of summed up quite a few of them and then put them all together so that a number of questions relevant to one, and I put across that one. So thank you so much, Geeta Baidu.
Thank you.
On behalf of Northeast Writers Forum,
Thank you.
thank you so much, and thank you all our participants for coming in,
Yes.
for chipping in, and for
Yes.
bringing in your presence and your energy with us. Dipankar, Dipanja, Dhruba, I think we can call it a day here. Ranjana, you have been a wonderful participant. Thank you so much. And Geeta Baidu says thanks to every one of us. This is Ruti Sweta Samantre. Lovely session, she says. And yes, thank you, everyone. So we wind up. Thank you, Geeta Baidu.
Thank you. And tell Dhruba also thank you very much. And your whole
Dhruba also, thank you so much. We hope everyone stays well, stays safe. And here's cheers from the Northeast Writers Forum to Geeta Dharmarajan and to all of our participants. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Cheers, Mona.
Thank you.